Hey guys, welcome back. It's Greg again. Today I'm going to be continuing with the grots. Instead of working on the main grots themselves, I like to at this point usually do the bases because it helps keep me motivated when I'm working on models. The type of base I use for my orcs is a wasteland base. It's from Dragon Forge Design. It's a resin base, so it's got a lot of texture already built into it. So generally the main way I do the bases is just with a couple layers of paint, some dry brushing, and a wash. And looks great for tabletop gaming. You probably want to add a little bit more layering, maybe some flock, if you wanted to use these bases for a higher quality tabletop. If you're doing competition, I'd probably recommend you make your own base, as you may be judged down for using a retail base. Anyway, this is what they're going to look like in the end. So right now, I'll start working on these. I'm going to use a base of Morphang Brown, followed by a dry brush of Kimmy Brown, followed by a lighter dry brush, Rockhearth Flesh, followed by everybody's favorite Devlin Mud. I usually start by, this is actually just a palette, wax paper, and sheets that, just putting some water down, that you can pick up from any paint store or Michael's or whatever your local place is, and just add a little bit of water to help it flow better, cover the whole of the base. Try to get a nice coat. Sometimes going on thicker is a little bit better. This is tabletop, so we're going for speed over generally quality. Most tabletop army judgings are usually done based on army consistency, more than whether or not you've got one or two really nice bases. Always make sure the majority of your models are done to the same level before working on raising the detail of them. Otherwise what will happen is you'll get knocked off points no matter how much your awesome Riptide looks like, because you didn't base the Fire Warriors properly. The brush I'm using is just number 8 round. It was actually a gift I got from James Wapple when I was talking to him online and bought his how to paint videos. You can read more about James' painting style at Wappalicious blog, or if you just Google search James Wapple miniatures, his blog will usually come right up. The way you're supposed to be painting these is not holding with your fingers and put them on a nice base and whatnot, but I like just getting into it. You might ask, why do you put it on the palette instead of taking it from the pot? Well, one reason is because I have spilled an entire pot over myself before when not paying attention and trying to grab paint from it. The other reason is I'm trying to look good for this video and not get yelled at too much. But the main reason is you get a lot better flow if you have even the tiniest bit of moisture added to a palette and then you pull the paint and mix in with it. Some people use a variety of thinners and retarders. I'm not doing anything fancy here. I'm just painting on some bases. I'm going to pause this now while I do the rest, and then I'll come back when we get to the next stage. Welcome back, guys. I am now going to work on the next step, which is dry brushing. I've got my paper towel, some large dry brushes, and my Khmer Brown, or however you actually say that. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it wrong. It's a common trait of the Greg. Dry brushing, the way I do it, I usually just put a little bit of paint on the brush, get it coated, wipe it off on the paper towel, and go back on the base and just lightly dry over top of it and the sides. In the first stage I usually do it a bit more so that each one of these is slightly different than the rest. The final step in this process is a wash, so that will cover up a lot of any of the mistakes or extra dry brushing I got on there I didn't really want. Most of the stuff I'm doing now is just learned off of tutorials and stuff I've seen online. Though I did take painting in college, they don't really teach you how to dry brush. It's mainly how to overspend money on oils and canvases. One of the nice benefits of this method is because you're doing 10 to 12 bases at once, they start drying by the time you get to the last base. And then you can start on the next one, enabling you to get a lot done in a short period. I also realized when I started doing this, I might have meant to start my first color as Rhino X-Hide instead of the Morphang, but I'm hoping that these are close enough in tone to the other bases that this will just help differentiate the squad. One thing to be careful of, if you are using a primer that's not very thick, for example, the primer I used on these guys is a Vallejo black through the airbrush. And I found the Vallejos tend to spray on really thin, which is great if you're immediately putting more layers of paint on top with the airbrush and then varnishing. But if you're doing something like this with dry brushing, you can get into trouble real fast and actually brush off your primer layers. So make sure you're not digging in when you're dry brushing. So there we go, there's 12 bases. Second step, just got 2 more steps already. I keep a different dry brush around for the different steps, so I can clean the brush right away, since I'm pretty bad at brush maintenance. I'm hoping some of you yell at me and have suggestions. By the way, thanks for the previous suggestions in the last video. I got myself a stiff brush to help take those shavings off the models when I'm working on them. It worked great, thus encouraging me to continue doing these videos. Now we're moving up to the next color, which is Rakarth Flesh. Used to be Deneb Stone, but you know, GW loves to change the names of things. This one I do a lot lighter, because it tends to be quite bright by comparison. And I try to mainly get the edges around things. You'll see the base really starts to pop in this step. These are mainly just a troop choice, but I think troop choices perform better when they're on nice bases. You may be wondering if I'm going to put any flock or anything on these. I might, but also wait to the last step for that, so I can see how the model's positioned on the base first before I decide to flock it. There's nothing worse than making a pretty base and then finding out that the model's stepping on the grass you put down. I guess that's more realistic. These do look a lot brighter than the other ones. Oh well. Lesson learned. No, I'm not going to win Best Army at Nova, but I would like to at least represent the orcs somewhat. Normally I'd stop the video, but this step's pretty quick, and then the next step's even faster. Oh, I'm going to have to stop the video. I got to take a picture. Based on suggestions, I'm also taking pictures of these stages for those of you who are looking at this at work and can't go to YouTube. Oh shoot, that's a lot of frickin' paint. There we go. One of the keys to dry brush is not getting too much paint on there. Oh, I think I already did that one. Oh, that one's getting the second one. And there's a lesson. Make sure you don't do bases you've already done. Alright, be right back for the next step. On to the last step. I'm doing a nice mud wash on these guys. Let's take the wash and apply liberally. I usually like to make sure that the crevices are very dark, at least for tabletop, to add some contrast to the base. And sometimes it's useful to keep another brush nearby to keep any spots from showing up. When I do the washes, I take them directly from the pot. That way everyone can cry when this pot spills over later because you can't get Devlin mud anymore. As all the warmongers will constantly talk about online, everyone has their favorite paints and washes. I tend to go through phases where I'll buy a whole new slew of paints from a different manufacturer just to try them out. And then I'll realize I have way too many paints and I don't even paint that often, but you guys know how this hobby is. One minute you're talking about how there's no way you're ever going to buy a Titan, the next thing you know you're putting together a Stampa. You can also use a paper towel when you're doing this, but sometimes a brush gives you more control. I'm actually using a model painter wash brush for this as part of my continuous experimentation with brushes. I've been meaning to try out some Series 7s, but I also want to get at least a semi-more competent first so I can actually appreciate the differences a nice brush gives you. It's hard to see because of how reflective these bases, the wash makes the bases. But I'm just making sure that there's no spots in the wash. Basically caused by it clumping up like this. And just go in with another brush. Smooth it out. Make sure you get this nice, even, consistent look across your bases. It's very hard to talk while you paint. I just find painting very therapeutic. Really makes up for crappy days. It's funny at the same time, you're always having an apprehension to paint, and once you get painting, everything is wonderful again. Or awesome, as some people would say. That person being Chris Pratt, my spirit animal. And sometimes you'll get little bubbles if you're using the wash brush and just dragging it along really quick. They don't usually cause a problem, but I don't like bubbles in 40K. They're not very effective. The next video I'm going to have about this is going to be my airbrush techniques for doing the grots, followed by my wash techniques. Hopefully someone on the internet can find it useful. Once this step is done, I'm going to stop the video again to let the wash dry. One thing with washes you really want to do is, unless you're going for a particular effect, make sure to give them a good 45 minutes or so to dry. If not, what you'll get is when you go back to work with them, the brush will pull up the wash, and then you'll be left with these weird spots that are nearly impossible to get rid of without completely rewashing the whole thing again. Not so difficult when you're doing a little base like this, but I imagine if you did it over an Imperial Night, it could be very frustrating. These bases are a little bit lighter than the other one, but I think they look good. Well, this one's going to be troublesome. Two left. Oh, right. I just got to spend like an hour getting all this on the blog. I'm productive. If you guys have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them, but I'm very amateurish at this stuff. But I'm pretty sure most of us are, except for those who are not. I have not ever made any money painting miniatures, though I have used it to barter trainer sessions for my personal trainer. I paint his Necrons, he erects my body. Works out pretty good. Alright, I'll be back when the wash dries to show you how these guys look. These are mostly dry now. They turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with them. I guess the Devlin mud really helps darken them back up, so I got the formula right. And now it's on video, so hopefully I can't forget it again. As the last step with these, I like to just paint the edge. When I do that, I actually put a little bit of silly putty or sticky putty in an old GW paint pot so it can hold the base down. And I just take some gas black straight from the pot this time because I want it nice and thick, so I only have to paint once. And now I'm using a filbert brush. I'm just going around the edge. So it looks all nice and cool. This is probably not the best brush for this. Oh, I need some water or something. Jeez. Alright, let's not take Chaos Black straight from the pot, guys, because it's really thick. There we go. That's much better. Last thing you want to do is paint black over that nice base you just made. And that's that. That is one finished base. I'm going to go and do the rest of this, And thanks for watching. And next week I'll have my airbrush adventures for you. Have a good one, guys. See you later.